Hey everybody! Welcome to MovieDive. We'll dive into some shit.
Dante, wait up! Dante! Dante! You gotta stay with me, boy. We don't know where we are. This isn't a dream then. You're all really out there.
So excited.
I'm Mike. Also go by Huffman.
And my name is Sierra Madre. And today we're going to be talking about the wonderful Pixar movie named Coco.
It's a Pixar movie. So, you have it's a heartwarming tale about the value of good relationships.
Yes.
Just like every other Pixar movie.
Well, hold up a second. Wait a minute. No. That's not the meaning of every other Pixar movie. Sometimes in the balance of other things. Well, no. Inside Out is about inner life.
Yeah, but it's about the relationships between your inner life. Look, it's fine. It's not a point of criticism. The point is that in the end, Pixar movies are all trying to kind of like get at, human relationships. The devil's in the details. So that's why, some Pixar movies are worse than others. But they're not all terrible. And
No.
I think Coco comes up as definitely one of the better ones. I don't know if I loved it more than Inside Out, but there's parts that were really great. The story is about, this kid trying to rediscover his family. No, the kid just wants to sing, dance, and do music.
His main motivation is to make music. He is a musician. He just has songs just in his heart, and his family hates music. His family is absolutely against it because of something that happened way, way back that just kind of traumatized his family for forever because his great-great-grandmother was married to a dude and had a kid, and then the dude left. And so ever since then, they've just been dealing with the ramifications of that. They have a successful shoe business, which is fantastic, but this kid doesn't want to make shoes. He wants to make music.
There's a deep family mythology and tradition that they're all very... See, there's like a very... it's always the tradition versus the kid going against, rebelling against his family as he's coming into his own thing.
Yeah.
But the way that he comes into his own thing is that he accidentally goes through a portal to the death dimension.
Death dimension.
It's the Mexican Dia de Muertos.
That's the holiday.
Holiday, right? Day of the Dead. It's the day that they have, all right, where they celebrate the dead, which I think is super great. I think it kind of like it has I feel like they represent death in a much more positive.
It's just
light.
another part of life.
Yeah, in their mythology.
That's what I like about it. We have, in more I guess anglicized culture, an idea of the afterlife where you're dead and you go to heaven and there's a separation. Maybe there's some sort of idea that people watch over you when they're gone, but there's not this idea that they come back necessarily. At least I didn't grow up with that idea. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't grow up with the idea that they will come back and visit you and that they're constantly present with you. I had maybe a vague idea, they might be watching over me, but not that, you're going to lay out food for them so that they can, and put their picture out so that they can come back. And I don't know, I thought that was a very sweet way. The way that they present death in this movie is a very sweet way of looking at it, like you are just remembering them and honoring them, and not letting the fact that they came before you and allowed you to happen be forgotten, which I thought that was sweet. And actually, if you're going to talk about how this movie is in line with other Pixar movies, okay, so it's about relationships. Well, a lot of movies are about relationships, but this movie is different from other Pixar films because I'm trying to remember if a Pixar film has ever focused on family. They've had families.
Hold on. They've
had families, but I don't know if they've ever like focused on how the individual operates in a family.
All right, the very first Pixar thing, Toy Story, in my opinion, was about family. The toys were all together as a familial unit. They all took care of each other, and all.
That's not what that movie
and it was about integrating into
you
that
are
thing.
very confused, sir. That movie was about how Woody didn't want to have his spot taken by Buzz. That's what that movie was about, and it was about maybe relationship fading. Or not being the same, or friendship not being the same as it used to be. Somebody taking your spot. You're best friends with this dude his whole childhood, and he gets a new toy and throws you aside. That's what Toy Story was about.
No, come on. I mean, yeah, but that's literal interpretation. But there's
there's
subtext.
There was no
All right,
subtext.
fine. Incredibles. Was Incredibles about family?
Incredibles was about family, but it was also about a man going through a midlife crisis.
With his family.
Yeah, and how he dealt with that.
This
was about... I mean, okay, so you have... And I mean, there are a few families, but it's not...
Bejeweled? Not Bejeweled. But no, not Bedazzled. What was the one? The one with the Celtic... With the Celtic...
Brave.
Princess. Brave.
Oh, yeah, that was about a mother and daughter.
So the kid goes to the underworld. To
the underworld?
Dia de la Muerte world. It might be heaven or something. The land of the death. With the whole traveling to land of death. I mean, you could of course read it literally, and obviously, you might like there's the afterlife, and you go there and you live with the rest of your family there. That's like the end of it. But I mean, clearly with the way that they depict the participation of the living in the lives of the dead and the dead in the lives of the living, the theme seems to be that, like, the family never leaves, and it's always a coherent unit that's always participating in, in each other's lives.
Yeah.
So there's that element that, your family and who remembers you is, as far, like, death is not permanent. So death, whether you live or die, isn't important. What's important for this movie is that you're remembered through, somebody.
Yeah.
And even though there's a heavy familial element, there's also, they have the whole thing where, like, the famous singer, celebrity guy gets tributes from, like, all sorts of people. So it's not like his family just remembers him, but it's like,
everybody.
Anyone who remembers him, it has a direct relationship with him, which I think is a very interesting... It's an interesting theme, and I like the way they're presented it. Though, my biggest problem with it also is, if you were to interpret it like that, it feels like... It sends the message that you owe something to your family, and to be a certain way with them. And I feel like maybe that's a little bit of... I don't know. It feels kind of like a restrictive sort of message. Like... There's so many people who, for whom, like, their family doesn't work for them. And it doesn't even have to be, like, necessarily abusive, but sometimes it is abusive. Miguel is the main kid character in the movie who's trying to achieve his dream of becoming a musician. What if his family never reconciles that dream for him? What if they go, like, no, you can't? Because at the beginning of the movie, they go, no, you can't. But obviously, the movie wraps it up neatly. And he can at the end.
In the beginning of the movie, they go, no, you can't, and his grandmother smashes the guitar that he spent who knows how long cobbling together from a bunch of different things. He was using nails for the struts. He built this thing with his bare hands, and she just, in one fell swoop, just smashes it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty, like, for me, I was like, that's a pretty dark moment.
Yeah. What do you do if your family rejects who you are?
Yeah.
He's a musician. Like, it's not like, I want to play music. No, he's a natural. Like, in his heart, anything he does, he's playing music. And they're rejecting in the core who he is. What do you do if your family rejects you like that?
And in the movie, he reconciles with the family by the end of the day. But, in real life, you might not reconcile with your family for years.
If you think about
Decades, ever. Sometimes, sometimes there's like your dependency on your family and being remembered by them seems to be like, that to me is too strong of a prescription by this movie. I feel.
But you know what? I think that it was very accurate, because that was upsetting me when we were in the movie. I was like, well, when Hector goes off to, he goes to this little cobbled together village of people who have no families out in the real world. They're not going out on Dia de los Muertos to go back to visit their families, because no one's remembering them. No one's putting up their picture anywhere. So they have to make their own family in this little city that they've made. And like they said on one of my favorite podcasts, Black Men Can't Jump in Hollywood, it's I
haven't listened to that yet.
You've got to. It's so on point for this movie, because one of the people in there, they brought up the fact that for like LGBTQ people who have to run away from their families because they've been rejected by their families, for many people who are on the street, who might be suffering from who knows what thing drove them out, either abuse or mental health issues or anything like that has separated them from family or society. They're living out here on their own, and it is bleak and it's terrible, and it's in our living world. Like, forget about death, forget about people, the movie prescribing a world where you don't just get to go to heaven. You're kind of stuck in this area where if no one's remembering you, you're kind of alone. If you don't have family, you're alone. That's real life for a lot of people. And so, like, I walked out of the movie and I was mad, because I was like, well, what about the people who aren't getting along with their families so well? What about people who are alone? What about people who don't have friends or don't have millions of fans like De La Cruz,
According to the mythology of the movie, you cease to exist. The way the movie kind of portrays it in the dead world, they visit literally a ghetto of people who have limited or no access to their family. I don't know if that puts the onus on the dead people to have done it. I feel like the movie frames it. It's like for something that they didn't, like they couldn't reconcile themselves with their family. Like, not their family not taking responsibility for them. It's from the, it's from their perspective, like from their, it's on them.
We don't get a perspective
we
on
don't
that.
Get, oh yeah.
And honestly, anyway. I have to say, I'm glad that they included that. They could have just left it as, even though there is a pretty big plot point that is brought up in that city, the fact that you don't just get to stay dead. There's something after that. If you're not remembered, you fade away, which is pretty important in the movie, and they established that in that city. They could have found another way to establish that fact and never introduce that city. And Hector could have been this lone person who somehow, because we think he, is some sort of loser or something to begin with, that he doesn't have family or friends. And he could have been, the only one that we saw in that situation. They could have presented that way. But they presented a city full of people who were very loving and very, very willing to build families of their own in this city so that they could have community. They just happened to not have families out in the wider world, and they didn't say whose fault it was ultimately, or if anybody was at fault. I mean, it could just be that everyone they knew died. We don't know.
It's possible.
They don't really go into that.
Yeah, I guess true.
That's for Coco too. I don't know. I think that what this movie did with what it had, I think that they presented it in a very considerate way, because even though I was upset at first when I realized, oh, Hector's out here and when he was running up that bridge and he just started sinking, and you realize that no one around him cares about it, and he's just left alone because he happened to not have family on the outside. It's heartbreaking. But I think that that's very real. And I appreciate that Pixar was able to present that in a way that it's beautiful. It's heartbreaking, and it's real, and it's beautiful, and it's in a children's movie. Ideas of death and loneliness and being forgotten. Also with ideas of being beholden to your family, being beholden to a community in some ways, because there's community in that movie as well.
Out of the movie, I think that's really my only point of criticism. But really, it's just just an interesting way that they framed it. Otherwise, yeah, great family movie. Looks beautiful.
The colors,
and,
man.
Yeah.
The colors are absolutely gorgeous.
Well,
and I'll tell you another
looking,
thing.
well animated.
I'll tell you another thing too. The music.
Music was great.
The music was fantastic. Like, I'm trying to think of the last time I saw an animated musical where I was like, man, I could see myself like listening to these songs that people would sing.
I'm not much of a musical fan, so I'm not going to be offended if there's a song on, but I'm also kind of, I'm looking at it, like just waiting for it to get through so I could keep going to the next
You
point
hate
in the
musicals.
plot.
You hate musicals.
So they loaded enough plot into some of these songs, at least some, because there's a couple where it was like his performance. The movie is about music, so it's like I guess he has to sing, but I don't care. I don't like it, but overall, though, just objectively speaking, great songs and great music. On a technical level, the movie is fantastic. Great music, great effects, animation, super detailed. They're even doing like some really interesting, more realistic type of movements in these cartoons now. So that's kind of neat.
The way they animated this?
Yeah, there's some good like really crisp looking animation in there that, like, even if you're not a fan and you're not usually paying attention to this kind of stuff, I think this will catch you off guard a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the way that the way when they showed Grandmama Coco, when they showed her and her skin
was old.
It just looked like she had lived a life. It looked like I've seen people like that, and it struck me. I mean, it wasn't just, you didn't just have like the smooth skin. You had her skin where it's all wrinkly. You had the dog skin, which was like kind of like mangy, that crazy looking dog, and it blew my mind. The his grandmother, Miguel's grandmother, kind of hobbled like a grandmother. Yeah. And then she whipped shoes at people like a grandma would. Like it was too real. Great. It was almost too real.
No, there's some cool, like, really neat little touches.
That made it feel. It made it feel real without being creepy and authentic. I think that's the only word I can think to say about it. It just felt lived in.
Yeah, just honest. All right, that's it. See Coco if you like the Pixar cartoons.
See Coco even if you don't. Just take some time out of your day.
Recommend.
Go watch something beautiful.
Hey guys, thanks for watching our super duper video. We put a bunch of work into it, so if you liked it and you liked our discussion, click the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and do all the things that you do on YouTube.